Commissioners, March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GL Chapter 38, Section 18, and the Governor's June 16th, 2021 revised order extending remote participation by all members in any meeting of a public body. This meeting of the Great Barrington Selectboard and Finance Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and our parties with a right and a requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. Pursuant to MGL 7C 30A, Section 20F, after notifying the chair of the public body, any person may make a video or audio recording of an open session of a meeting of the public body, or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Beginning of the meeting, the chair shall inform other attendees of any such recording. So this meeting is being recorded by CTSB, by the town of Great Barrington, by the Berkshire Edge, and if they're on the line, the Eagle. Any member of the public wishing to speak at the meeting must receive permission of the chair. The listing of agenda items are those reasonably anticipated by the chair, which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. So before we start, just a little housekeeping. Well, let's first do roll call. We'll start with the select board. Eric? Aye. Ed?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
And aye. The only one I don't see is Garfield yet. Finance Committee?
Aye.
I think you gotta call the roll for.
Okay, all right, I will call the roll. Ann?
I'm here.
Tom?
Here.
Meredith?
Here.
Michelle?
Here.
And Philip Ornstein, I'm here.
So a little bit of housekeeping. Tonight we will finish tab 6 as the agenda outlines. We'll do special articles. Tomorrow night is when we'll discuss each department, each page of tab 6, and take a vote on each one separately. And then we'll also vote on capital and on special articles. After the Finance Committee's public hearing, we'll have further discussion and we'll vote on the entire budget. And you can make changes individually to departments also at that point. That's usually the way we've done it, so we'll continue to do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So we're starting with tab 6, which is the police department. It's page 14 of tab 6, and I'll turn it over to Mark and Chief Storty. And I think Tara's here also.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Mark, you want to say anything before I get going?
No, go ahead, Chief. I went ahead and promoted you and your staff, so you're good to go.
Okay, great. Again, thanks everybody. It's hard to believe a year ago I was probably a month or so into this position, and I just want to, reflecting back, thank Ann, Sue, and everybody who helped Mark walk me through that process last year. This year I think I came a little bit more prepared, so hopefully I don't need too much guidance. So it's been an exciting year for the police department. As I promised a couple years ago, we continue to operate the Comfort K9 program at no cost. And to take that a step further, working with Mark, the union, we were actually able to do that with the Patrol K9 program also. So that was a pretty exciting progression in the department. A couple of little changes I wanted to outline before I get to the budget stuff was that July 1st, I increased the usage on the car fee for details, and to date, that's generated over $4,000 in revenue back to the town for details. And I got a quick tally for our parking tickets to date, and that was over $10,000 so far that we've brought back in parking tickets that we've written. With the change in legislation and police reform, it's kind of forced all of us to kind of reevaluate police departments and make changes to kind of increase professionalism, transparency, and accountability. So when budget season came up, I kind of approached that in a way with a little bit of excitement, as you could probably imagine. That first meeting we had, I was excited about it, because I was looking at ways that I possibly could take the department into the future with some progressive work. To outline some of the progressive work that we've done over the last year. So, as you've seen in my budget that we submitted, we're under a 2% increase, which was my goal, is to really try to crunch down the numbers and put together the best budget we could without getting carried away, and to try to meet the obligations and the goals that police reform has set upon us. So to do this, there was 3 parts I attacked, or I looked at, and you'll see there are 3 major changes that I made around police training, accountability, and transparency. The first thing I did was to increase our patrol staffing, to add an additional sergeant. That gives us police or supervisory coverage on every shift of the day, except for 2 weekend shifts on the day shift. With accountability, having that supervision in place, and having a younger police force, I think it's essential. The second thing I did was to ask for an additional officer. Police reform has put some limitations on us. One of the things that it didn't really take into account was the smaller departments. By 2024, all part-time officers will be pretty much eliminated, and you'll have to have full-time training in order to even work part-time. So many part-time officers won't be working. They're pretty much, you'll see in the budget, it reflects that I've reduced the part-time number in half. I cut it in half. And the third change I was looking to make is to also to bring back the investigator's position. With the cases that we're seeing now, they're more complex, they're more thorough, they take more time. So having that ability to handle, to give the larger cases to an investigator would help ease up some of that stress on the patrol officers and give them more time out on the street to do some of the programs that I've been working on. Let me see, what else do I have? So I was able to do all this and with the retirement of two officers, senior officers who received higher salaries and higher benefit packages, and the hiring of younger officers who start at a lower pay scale. Also, by adding the sergeant, that eliminates OIC pay that we are contractually obligated to pay to the senior officer on shift to handle those responsibilities. And I was able to take those savings and reinvest them into these new positions. So I truly hope you support my vision and see where I want to bring the police department in the future. And hopefully we can continue to provide the best service that we can for the community. I think I'll answer any questions unless you want me to go line by line.
No, I think you've gone through the important lines. That now I'll open it up to questions from anyone on either board or. And go right ahead.
Thanks, Chief Story. I really appreciate it. You mentioned you hired a new investigator, or you made a new investigator line or position. Is that then included in one of the patrol officer positions?
Yeah, it's actually not a new position. It's a position we've had, and it's a police assignment. So it's where I take a current patrol officer that we have on staff, and I give them a special assignment, has its own job description, and so it's not creating a new position. It's just filling that position because I'm getting my staffing back up to where it should be.
Okay, I didn't see it there and I just wasn't
Yeah.
sure. Okay, thanks.
Ed, go right ahead.
Yeah, this may be a really silly question. $17 for care of prisoners? Are we just not holding anyone over mealtime?
Where you seen that, Ed?
The actuals.
Actuals, thank you.
Oh. So care of prisoners, is that year to date? Yeah, so one of the things with bail reform is that, people are entitled to bail. And they didn't want to punish people who couldn't afford to be bailed, to be held longer than somebody who could afford to do it. So a lot of detainees now are being released quicker and faster, so we're not holding. Plus, COVID plays into that number too. More people weren't going out and things like that. But bail reform definitely had something to do with that. And we also charge for out of town prisoners. So if the out of town person houses their detainee and are at our holding facility, we have a set fee that we charge them for that. It's $150.
Thank you.
So.
Phil, go right ahead.
Yes, I just noted the email that was sent earlier today about a new position for accreditation. I'm saying that right, accreditation officer. Is that something included in the budget, or is that?
It is. It's in the stipends. I propose a $1,250 stipend to be paid to the accreditation manager. That was reduced in half to be payable over a 2-year period. And I felt that because it was new and we're up for accreditation this year, and police reform has put a lot of changes and made it more complicated to become accredited, that that position deserved a stipend for it. And that's why I sent to try to outline how complex the position is. I thought it'd be better for you to kind of look and see exactly what goes into the responsibilities of accreditation manager than having me try to explain it to you.
No, you did that quite well. I commend you on that. But where is that? What is the projected cost of that position, and where is it included in the budget?
It's in the stipends on the third line up from the bottom, 5951910.
So it's just $5,000?
No, so that's a combination. That's a new line we created for stipends. The officers receive a Narcan stipend contractually of $150 each, and then I added the stipend for the accreditation manager into that stipend. So the combination between the $150 that the officers receive contractually for their Narcan stipend, and then you add the $1,250 for the accreditation manager stipend, that's where that total comes from.
Okay, so you're just to clarify, you're saying you can hire someone to do this job for $1,200? That's what.
No, it's Kara Becker, who currently already works for us.
Okay.
It's additional stipend for the extra duties and responsibilities that I'm placing on her.
Okay, and what position does she currently have? I'm sorry, I just don't know.
She's the executive assistant.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Okay, Ann, go ahead.
Yeah, just another quick question. I'm noticing you're reducing the overtime budget, and is that because of this sort of restructuring or
Exactly. The couple reasons that, adding additional officer for accountability, sergeant for accountability, and then another officer was really looking at ways to minimize the way our officers are working, and to work short staff, and to have the staff for support. It takes a toll, and it takes a toll over the years, and I feel it's more important to be able to have officers that can work, enjoy their 2 days off, and not have to be worried about being forced into work. So to supplement the additional officer and the additional command staff, I reduced the overtime budget dramatically and also reduced the part-time budget because that's going to be phased out within a few years. And again, with the goal of the health and wellness of the officers in the long term.
Great. All right, thank you.
Eric,
Yes, thank you. Chief, just, it's exciting to see that, you're able to make all these arrangements with, less than a 2% increase. But going forward, say, like next budget season, ideally, you'll still be hopefully you need to add to your ranks still, like you're still hoping to add 2 police officers in the future, or are we feeling that our staffing is right where you want it?
No, I'll be looking to go to, my total amount, counting myself, would be 18.
18? Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
And we're currently at 15.
15, so 3 more technically. Yep.
Yes.
Sounds good. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that my numbers were right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Lee, go ahead.
Thank you, Chief Storty, and I actually had that question as well. So thanks, Eric, for asking that. I just could you just remind us where we are with the dispatch? At one point, I thought we had a discussion about shared services, or that the dispatch might be moved to the sheriff's department. I'm just wondering if you could update us, or are there any plans, long-term plans about dispatch?
It's definitely on. We're talking about it, but you know, it's a pretty complicated issue, and there's a lot to be worked out. I don't anticipate in this next budget year to be having that conversation that quickly.
Okay.
Anyone else? I see no one else, so Chief, thank you very much, and your
Thank
staff.
you. I appreciate it.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Steve,
Yes,
it's Kara Becker. Sorry to interrupt. I was just curious if we can move up the emergency management and the ACO, since that is our area as well before fire.
yeah, we can do that.
Okay, I really appreciate that.
No
The
problem.
chief is still, Chief, you still there?
I am. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I
Thank you
was
all.
going to ask that too, but forgot.
Okay, no, that makes sense. So let's go to page 16, which is emergency management. And what was the other one, Kara?
Animal control.
Oh, that's right. I always forget animal control is yours now.
So there's really not much change in this budget for the emergency management. We are currently, Mark, myself, and Charlie are at some point this year we'll be talking about possibly restructuring the program or the position in some manner of this emergency management. I don't know when that's going to happen, but hopefully in the near future. The only big change is the equipment was reduced by $1,000. I requested 3, got reduced to 2. I would just like consideration to go back up to the 3. And I base that request on things are very expensive. You just never know, and $2,000 doesn't go very far with emergency management equipment. Thank you.
Any questions? Seeing none, then let's go to animal control, page 18.
Animal control, as you can see, this is a minor increase. Actually, it's level funded there, 0% change. I don't know if anybody has any questions about it.
Yeah. I don't see any questions. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, now go back to page 15, tab 6, the fire department.
You're good to go, Chief.
Good evening. The fire department budget this year actually is very simple and straightforward. There's really nothing new being requested, no changes to anything. Line items are adjusted primarily to just reflect reality and the increase in costs of everything. The biggest thing would be repair and maintenance. We've been over on that line item pretty much every year, and I've been kicking the bucket down the road on a bunch of things, and the increase in costs for both labor and parts is dramatically increasing. So that line item is up. And the only new thing in the budget, you'll see the new line item for subscriptions. For the last couple of years, I've been looking at subscribing to a service called Lexapol, which has SOG templates and policies for fire departments, which are legally vetted both federally and at the state level. And they also have a fantastic web-based service for how they're both viewable and signed off on, and there's the accountability that every firefighter is getting them and acknowledging them. Working on writing, updating our policies and SOGs has been one of my priorities for 10 years. It's something that I've very slowly pecked away at, but it's something that becomes more important every day, both for the efficient operation of the fire department and the liability of the town. And so that service would go a long ways towards helping me with that. But that's really the only new thing in the budget. So the only other thing that I wanted to point out is that doing inspections so far has been working out very well with Sheffield, and the increase or the change in structure for plan review fees and permits has actually worked out better than I thought. This year we'll probably bring in about $70,000 through both of those. But that's really all that I have. Happy to answer any questions, but like I said, there's no other changes or new requests.
Any questions? Go ahead, Tom.
Hey, Chief, what is an SOG?
Oh, sorry, standard operating guideline.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay. It sounds like a good service to have.
Michelle?
Just quickly, salary increases, are those contractual?
Correct. There are two things in there. One is that causes the slightly higher increases there. So the first thing is that our firefighters do have a STEP program, the same as the police and pretty much everybody else in public safety, where you both get your cost of living, plus for the first so many years you get an extra, I think for them it's 2.3% or something. The other thing that you'll see is the additional increase in overtime. That reflects the fact that we have to backfill shifts when somebody's off. So each of our firefighters for different reasons are moving up to an additional week's vacation. So that creates an extra 15 days that I need to backfill, which increases the overtime.
Thank you.
Thank you. Phil?
Yes, is for the call firefighters, is there a number of individuals that you're paying there, and just how is that being allocated?
They get paid hourly for when they're training or called in. They operate off of a minimum 1 hour call-in time. So the actual number of call firefighters is always fluctuating. Ideally, we want that to be higher rather than lower. But right now I have about 18 call firefighters. 15 of them, I would say, are active right now.
Okay, and thank you. And the increase in the hydrant rentals, is that because
Okay,
you have
good
additional
question.
migrants or higher fee?
Good question. I meant to point that out. There is no increase in the hydrant rentals for Great Barrington Fire District. I did budget in a 10% increase for Housatonic, which has a new, they will be going for a new rate increase for both the ratepayers and the hydrants this year. And so I don't know what that will be. Ultimately, obviously, it's up to what the town negotiates with the DPU. But I threw in a 10% increase there for whatever happens.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? I don't see any other hands. So we'll move ahead to page 21 of tab 6, which is community services.
Steve, I can take this one.
Thank you.
This is formerly known as our grant and aid program, and this budget basically just funds annual grants to local nonprofits. So unchanged from prior years, with the exception of a $5,000 bump this year. And I did include some historical data in my memo. I'm not sure if anyone caught that or not, but the range from year to year is generally $20,000 to $35,000.
Questions? Seeing none, giving you every chance. 23, page.
I'm so sorry.
Go ahead.
I can't find my hand raised. Oh, there it is.
I see two of your hands, but.
I'm sorry. So Mark, this is where we allocate funds to organizations in the areas. That's this budget line?
Correct. This is all grants to local nonprofits.
And you said it ranges between 20 and 35?
Meaning, if you look back at the historical appropriations over the last 5 or 6 years, okay, this number fluctuates based on, our needs during that individual year. So last year, for example, we proposed 35 or 40 and then trimmed it back to, I think, 30. Is that, town meeting vote last year was 30,000. So we tried to put a little more money in this line this year to restore it back to what it's been in prior years. But again, this number goes up and down every year.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
And I'm sorry,
go ahead.
One more. Where is the reporting placed on, say, on the town website if people wanted to see the recipients of these grants?
So we generally issue a press release, so you'd find that information in the news, but I can forward that spreadsheet on to the boards. That way you don't have to sift through all of the news to find it.
Yeah. Well, that's a general problem, I would say, that relying on the press releases as opposed to a cumulative list, but that's not important. Thank
Mark,
you.
I think it'd be great if you would forward it. That would be wonderful.
Sure, I can actually do that right now. So,
there's actually a very organized process to do this. The press release is the culmination of the process. This has worked out very well over the last few years, the way the process that we're using now. Many years ago, the individual awards were voted on at town meeting, and that did not work out well.
I'm sorry, let me clarify my question. I fully support this program. It's more and more a question of how to find the history of the recipients of these awards.
Yeah, no, I understood. I wasn't a response to you, Phil.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay. Moving ahead to page 23, Veterans Affairs.
So I'm going to take this, Steve.
Please.
Just to give a brief overview, as you can see, it's approximately a 5% reduction over last year's budget. First, I'd like to point out I should have changed the name of the top line that used to say American Legion lease, you'll notice in your monthly budget reports, I changed it. I forgot to change it on the spreadsheet. It is now called Veteran Services. That was the line that is allocated for the annual rent subsidy for American Legion and the VFW post 8183. And if everyone recalls at last year's budget time, we've increased that line to 9,000 annually to each of those posts. And that's being level funded. I reached out to both of them this year. They were happy with that amount and asked that we continue with that. Supplies, I have a slight increase to that. I coordinate that with Carolyn Wickman in the billing inspector's office as she orders based on the veterans agents recommendations for the wreaths and the grave markers. And so that one is a little tough every year, and I just always like to make sure we have enough there to be able to meet the order. Veterans benefits, the finance committee knows I spoke on this last evening. That has been decreasing over the last few years, and I was able to actually pull that down. I originally requested 95,000 and felt comfortable going to 90,000. We've been leveling it around 100,000 the last 3 years. Actuals have come in much lower. Fiscal 21 came in just shy of $70,000. Current lead for fiscal 22, we're tracking well under budget. So I feel that 90,000 will be more than enough. And as everyone knows, that is also 75% reimbursable back to the town from the state. And then the Veterans District is for our share of the district agent, and that is the allocation for fiscal 22. That sheet, I'm sorry, 23, which does have a slight increase.
So I have one question for you.
Sure.
And this isn't probably the time, but out of the 18,000, which we increased last year to 18, only 4,500 has been spent. That's not you spending it, that's the veterans. Have you been in touch with them? Because they seem to think there was a need last year, and I hate to see that money go unspent.
So sure, happy to address that, Steve. They actually bill us quarterly, and I do believe that goes through Mark's office. I think the second quarter went out middle of January, or maybe the first warrant of January, but they do bill quarterly. I actually spoke to Andy last week or the week before he called.
Oh, perfect. Appreciate that. Questions? Moving ahead to boards and commissions, page 26.
I'm happy to do this, I guess. We didn't really, all the boards were reached out to provide what their budgets were. So these are their original requests, as you can see in the budget request column and the town manager's recommendation. It is a reduction over the prior fiscal year, and that is in the Historic District Commission's budget. They only requested 5,000 this year.
Any questions? Ian, go ahead.
Thanks, and I think this was because the 12,000 last year was due to some requests for some monument repairs or something. I'm trying to remember. Wasn't that right?
Something like that. Yes, I believe you are correct. And sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that was tied to a project.
That's what I remember. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Move to the next page, celebrations and events, page 27.
I'm happy to address this budget. It's a slight increase of $2,500, and the bandstand program budget you'll see that there's a new line this year proposing a stipend. That's the only significant change this year, and that's to fund the coordinator stipend position, which we've never done in the past, but it's something that I think is probably due. I know that the organizer puts a lot of hours into this program, so we thought this was a good way to recognize him for that service. We also are suggesting that we increase the celebrations line by $2,500. And while that may seem like a big bump, just keep in mind that this budget in the past has been at $10,000. So it's been significantly higher, and we've cut it back for a few years. But this is the funding that we use to install and remove all the banners along Main Street several times a year now. We use this account to fund any awards or plaques when we recognize individuals during the year. We also use this to make a donation to the holiday stroll for fireworks, and then any other town related event expense that comes up over the year. And the cost of installing and removing the banners has really increased significantly over the last couple of years, now that we have several different styles and we're changing them more frequently.
Bill, go right ahead.
Just historical question, is this the line item where we've traditionally paid the late David Grover?
Band programs, yes.
Yeah. And perhaps not for tonight, but has there been any consideration for some type of plaque or in his honor that would come out of this budget line?
There's a committee being formed now to recognize David this summer. Okay. And yes, that is another reason for the request in some additional funds this year. I think they'll do their own fundraising as well, but I'd like to have some funding available for that.
Okay, great, thank you.
Garfield.
Yes, thank you. I'm not sure if this is the right place, but I have to ask, during the celebration monies and banners that we use, and I had asked Mark about it, and I hope I'm not putting him on the spot, but I have not seen any banners or anything denoting Black History Month in town.
Mark, you want to answer that?
Sure. Garfield, I did respond to an email. I hope it didn't go to your spam account. I can resend it to you. But the Du Bois banners were installed in early January, and our goal each year is to have them installed in time for MLK Day in mid-January, and they'll stay in place right through the end of February.
I'm sorry, where are they, Mark? I haven't seen any other than...
The banners are on the poles on Main Street, and they've been up since early January. They are there. They do blend into the background a little bit. I understand why you might drive right by them. They don't pop like some of the others do, but they are on the poles on Main Street now.
And are they alluding to Black History Month? Because I've looked at it, maybe I have driven right by them. They're not reading, they blend in. But
yeah, we leave them up through Black History Month, and it also coordinates with the Du Bois birthday celebration events. And in my email, I also sent you a link, and on our homepage, on the homepage of our website, there are several events planned during the month of February.
Right, I did notice there was some events planned, right, but I didn't see any physical presence. That's why I was asking.
Yeah,
I'll look again. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions for celebrations and events? Seeing none, we will move to tab 9, special articles. And while we're flipping there, the attendance tonight was a total of, the highest point was 25 people, 14 participants and 11 attendees.
Nice.
Can I just ask Mark to resend that, Mark, for me, please?
Yes, I will.
Okay, we have 4 special articles. Go right ahead.
Okay, so the first up tonight is a community impact funding article. You'll see that we're recommending you fund this at the same level as last year, $350,000. Second special article is a $70,000 article for vocational tuition and transportation. Same, I believe this is year 3, is that right, Sue?
Yes.
Okay. And then, of course, 2 investments in our stabilization and capital stabilization accounts, similar to last year. Actually, no, I take that back. I believe we doubled up last year to make up for a year that we had to skip. So these are back at $100,000 each this year.
Any questions? Tom, go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Mark, should we take this opportunity now with all the free cash, should we start funding this OPEB liability? Or, I know it comes up in every audit, we sort of haven't done anything. I don't know if this is the year to start.
So I think perhaps we should consider establishing the trust this year, and this is just a recommendation, and then look at funding for year 2, fiscal 24. But I think that's a conversation the finance committee should have this year for sure.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Ian, go right ahead.
Thanks, Steve. Mark, the community impact funding, this is the funding that comes from the marijuana, it's the second set of funding or funds we get from it, and we have to use this money, correct? In this way.
That's correct. We try to follow CCC guidelines.
Right.
They're not very clear if you look at the CCC website, but we do focus on prevention and especially youth prevention.
Oh, right. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to make sure I'm clear on is that these are funds that are coming in from marijuana sales, and it's not adding to, it's sort of I know it's not a revolving fund. I don't know. It's not, it's spending money that we are getting in, and we have to spend it in a dedicated way.
I guess it depends on who you ask. If you ask the DOR, the answer is no. If you ask the CCC, the answer is yes.
Well, I agree with you that I think we should do the most cautious so that we don't end up having to pay back at some point in the future.
Agreed, and that's the approach we've taken each year, is to follow the CCC guidelines, which are more restrictive than the DOR's guidelines.
Right, but I guess what I'm also saying is it's not like we can sort of say, well, we should change this amount or not fund. I mean, we have to sort of allocate it in some way.
The amount we can change, Ian, because we're not spending the entire last year's allocation all at once. We made the decision last year to spread this out because we know this money probably will go away at some point.
I see. Okay, all right.
Mark, am I correct on that?
That's exactly why we took this approach last year and continued with it this year.
I'm remembering that now. And then the same, though, I just want to say is with the vocational transportation. I mean, this was something that's sort of new in our budget that we learned about, I think it was in 2019, and we don't have too much option here. We have to cover this expense.
Correct.
Yeah. And it's a lot less than we originally had needed to pay and budgeted and had thought we'd have to pay. So I know your staff worked really hard to help us bring this cost down. So
that's right. And circling back to the community impact funding, just wanted to remind everyone that we do have a separate committee that reviews those applications and makes a recommendation to my office on those awards.
Right. Okay. Thank
so
you.
We have a great process in place for that money.
Phil, go right ahead. And then Ed.
Yes, just 2 questions, please. On the community impact, I certainly agree there's a very good process in place, but just to confirm the funding process, the good problem is that these revenues have increased pretty dramatically. So just round numbers, it looks like we've received about 1.7 million based upon the received during fiscal 2020, and with this allocation we'll have allocated about $1 million, 3 separate chunks of 350,000. My understanding is, is that wrong? My understanding is what we've received, but have not allocated through the community impact funding program, just resides in free cash.
It should be 885 as of this year. 2 years at 350 and 1 year at 185.
Okay, all right. So correct. But big picture, do I have it right in that the formally certified and received, but not distributed, just sits in free cash. Is that about right?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you. And then just back to the OPEB funding trust issue. I certainly agree it's something that should be considered. Quick summary is I had an hour-long nerd session with Tom Scanlon that I'd mentioned previously that I actually finally had with him the other day. Last thing I want to do is get in the weeds on this topic, but I think it is worthy of review because there are certain benefits. It's a very complex issue, pros and cons, but there are some benefits that were a little bit surprising to me, sort of on the non-monetary side of creating that trust. So I agree it should be considered at some appropriate time.
Yeah, and I don't see any harm in establishing the trust without funding it this year. That'll just give us an advantage next year when we are talking budgets to only focus on financials.
Okay.
Thank you, Phil. Ed, go right ahead.
Yeah, just another word on, excuse me, the community impact funding. The state has just given, or is about to give the CCC, the Cannabis Control Commission, the authority to look into host agreements to make sure this kind of money is spent correctly. So Mark has been very careful about how it's spent, and if anyone were to challenge it, our I's are dotted and T's are crossed on that. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else for special articles? Okay, let's move ahead to, well, citizen speak. I don't see anyone raising their hand. Media time.
While we're waiting.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry. While we're waiting, I just wanted to mention that I just sent out the grant and aid PDF to all of you, so you should have it in your inboxes now.
Thank you. And in nearly record time, I believe we, unanimous consent, will adjourn. And we'll see you all tomorrow night.
All right, have a good night, everybody.
Everyone have a good night. Thank you very much.
Bye.